Classic Gamer here, and today we're doing a different kind of review. We're going to review one of the greatest considered controllers of all time, the NES controller. And not just the NES controller, the different versions of the NES controller, like the Yobo, and whatever else I can dig up that looks like an NES controller. So let's start off by talking about the NES controller.
Now I gotta say, I love the design of this controller. It's my favorite design controller ever. It's so simple, but yet it's so awesome and it works for so many different games. This is mostly for like 2D platforming games. It was like the perfect game for like games like Mario, Metroid, Contra, you name it. The buttons feel really nice. You can reach all of them on your fingers. It doesn't take real like strength to like reach all the buttons. It's relatively close. You can hold it like different ways. I've seen people hold it kind of like this and do it like that, and that's really weird. I'm more of the need to be using my thumbs all the time, so I'm always just gotta hold it like this. Actually, now that I take that back, that all 2D games work for this controller. Like, games don't have to be complicated. They can be really, really simple. They only need about 2 buttons right there. Jump and shoot, and you're good. The controller does feel really, really, really nice in my hands. Like, there is no denying that this is one of the most comfortable controllers I've ever held. Atari controllers were kind of that weird joystick before like the analog sticks were made. So this was a nice change. It was a weird change going from a joystick and then going to a D-pad. There is a select button and a start button. Usually select was to select a different item on the screen and then press start, which they could have just dumbed down to just up and down. Select could be used for different items and I guess different things in games. I don't like it when people, like the people back then, when they used the select as a button in the game. It was really just annoying. Not very many games used it. These are your 2 primary functions right here. Now, I know what you're thinking, like, just because it's like, it's a box shape, it looks like it'd be really uncomfortable nowadays, like, oh, that would be like, that's so horrible compared to nowadays, but actually it feels really, really nice. It's really lightweight, it's really cool design. It's so cool that they used it in 1080 Avalanche, and it's not nearly, like, it's lighter than a phone, and it's actually almost more comfortable to hold than a phone. But maybe I'm just because it's the nostalgia. But actually I can't even say that because I didn't have an NES until after I had a GameCube. The first system I ever played was a Sega Genesis, so I should be like a big Sega fanboy, but even when I was raised on Sega Genesis, I became a big Nintendo fanboy. But Sega did make me realize that a lot of consoles have a lot of different things to offer. So I can't go like, oh, because I had this weird little phase where I hated Sony, but now I just love Sony for some reason. I don't know why. So I can't say that nostalgia is making me say, oh, this controller is amazing, because I didn't own it until like after the GameCube. But it's still a really, really nice controller, and I wish Nintendo would like release something so like you would have a, you know how the Wii has that little insert slot you can insert into the nunchuck or the classic controller. Want them to redo this exact same controller design, put it for the Nintendo Wii, call it good. I want them to do that for the GameCube as well. Heck, just do it for every Nintendo system ever, which is 6 going to be. And I can't believe I had to think about that, but I'm trying to think like there's going to be 4 from Wii, but there were 5 when the Wii came out, but there's 6 now, so I was kind of confused. Forgive me. I nerded out. I became dumb jockey Nick for a second. And that's about all I can talk about for this controller right now. There are different other controller like add-on things, like not add-ons, I guess different adaptions like the turbo pad that I have I could talk about. But I'm gonna stay with the main stuff right now. I might choose to talk about that in a different episode. So let's switch to the Yobo real quick. Now the first question you're going to ask me is, what the hell is a Yobo? A Yobo was a little system that was made in 2005, like right before the Wii came out, that was pretty much a copy of the Nintendo Entertainment System, and all it pretty much is just a clone system, so that if you don't have if your NES is broken or something, or you don't have a top loader, you can buy this really lightweight object that you can't take your games out of, and play your games on there with crappy music. Yeah, I should talk about that system just by itself later. But let's talk about the controller. The controller is a little bit weirder, especially since you're used to those edges on the NES controller. I'm just now noticing, but it's not a bad controller. It's really complicated for an NES controller, but it's not bad. There are several different buttons on it. You still got the traditional select to start. You got this glowing thing. I guess it turns on when you press. I don't even know. Okay. I guess when I have it plugged in, if I press like BB or AA, that it would start lighting up. And that's the two new buttons up here. This is an X and Y. This is BB and AA. Double B, double A, double D. I'm just kidding. I'm pretty sure these are turbo buttons. Yeah, they're turbo buttons. I remember because we played ice hockey and I used those. And it's pretty much like a turbo controller if you want it made easy. For a controller made in 2005, it's not bad. It's not a horrible design. I kind of like it. But I would never choose this over the NES controller. It's still really light. The D-pad's slightly different. It has little circle parts in it. I guess makes it more 360, I guess. I'm not sure. Just kind of there for the design, maybe. Maybe not to get sued. And it has these little hinges right here. Makes it a little bit easier on the hands to hold, not just like soft or you're holding it like that. But just kind of a clone controller. Really weird design. But let's go to an even, well, not even weirder, but a rather weird design. The Nintendo Dogbone.
Now, the Dogbone comes from a system that's pretty expensive and hard to find, so I can't just speculate on the Dogbone. That's why I had to buy it.
Okay, so I do own a top loader, and it is pretty nice, except I have the one where you have the little cord in the back that has to be to a certain TV, like really old school TVs, or I don't even know what it's called, but I need a different one that has actual AV cables that will actually work on my various TVs that I have. Dogbone controller. It's kind of got that weird feeling that the Yobo controller had, where it's like, I kind of feel like there should be square, like, edges right here, but there's not, but whatever. It's really light. All these NES controllers are extremely light, but this one feels light, like, extremely light. The B and A buttons are now moved diagonally. I don't know if that helps or not, because you can just do that, but it wasn't that bad having it right there. I forgot to mention that on the Yobo, they're diagonal too, and it feels weird. But I guess depending on your playing style, that might be better or worse. For me, that's kind of worse, because I like just going at it, because the Wii has it now, and then I was so used to it when I had my NES before I had my top loader. But, you know, it's still nice. It has little round edges. It doesn't have the nice little handles that the Yobo does, but it's still rather easy to, like, hold in your hand. And yeah, it does have a Dogbone design, which is why everybody nicknames it the Dogbone. I don't know what it's actually called. I just call it the top loader controller. The select and the start are diagonal too. I don't know what's up with that. I almost would say that's easier to get to. Actually, yeah, the buttons are easier to get to on this controller. It's still rather weird, just kind of going like that. Not a little... What was I even going to say? Oh, well, this is a nice controller. If you have a top loader, you probably do have this controller already. Or if you don't have an NES and are looking for a Dogbone controller, I would look one up. They're not bad. They last pretty long. We have a broken NES controller, so that tells you about the lastability for NES. While this Dogbone controller, it's worked for me pretty damn well for pretty damn long. I say go check one out. But if you're a big Nintendo fan, you probably already have one. Now, something I find interesting about the NES controllers are the cords. The Yobo controller doesn't go very far. It's like the shortest of them all. The top loader goes the farthest, and the NES is barely behind the top loader controller, which means the controller that came out in 2006 has a shorter cord and a shorter reach than the controller that came out in like 1984 or 1985. Sorry, it's like 3 in the morning and I cannot think of it right now. But the more interesting thing is, compared to other Nintendo controllers, that this controller is the longest out of all of the original controllers. The Super Nintendo one is about as long as the Yobo controller, and the 64 is the shortest out of all of them, which is sad because that's one of my favorite controllers, even though it's really, really weird. I'll probably have to talk about that one later. And the GameCube controller reaches farther than both the Super Nintendo and the 64, but it doesn't reach as far as the NES controller. Weird. But comparing them to Dreamcast, PlayStation 2, and a Genesis controller, the cords are still not nearly as long as an NES cord. So I gotta say, how come the first system, well, not the first, but one of the first systems we ever had, has the longest cord from Future Technology? Good job, Future. Now, I don't have an original Xbox controller to compare with it either, but I want to get one in here because the one I have is crap. I used to have one with a cord, but it got stolen, so I'll have to get one of those before I do a controller review for the Xbox original.
So, the NES controller, one of the best controllers ever. I can see why people still think it's one of the best controllers. Is it my #1 favorite controller? No. Like, it's probably my top 5 favorite controllers, and there's so much to pick from. But it's a really good controller. I like it. Fits nice in my hands, really lightweight, works for almost every game on the NES. Actually, works for every game on the NES. If it didn't work for all the games, that'd be really, really weird. So, yay. NES controller is good.